3 years ago, a 28-year-old woman named Natalia Rodriguez stood at the altar of a packed church and watched her world fall apart. In front of 300 guests, Jordan Matthews, the man she'd spent 2.5 years loving, pulled the engagement ring off her finger and walked away. No explanation, no apology, just pure, devastating humiliation captured on dozens of phones and uploaded to social media before she could even process what was happening. And then something extraordinary happened. A stranger walked into that church and did something that would change Natalia's life forever. His name was Ethan Park. And this is the story of how the worst day of Natalia's existence became the doorway to understanding her true worth. This is a story about betrayal, dignity, and discovering that sometimes the worst moments crack us open to let the light in. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened at that altar, you need to understand who Natalia Rodriguez was at 28 years old. She was a graphic designer at a marketing agency in Seattle, living in a cozy studio apartment in Capitol Hill with her rescue dog, Milo. Her life was comfortable. Stable job, close friends, Sunday brunches with her younger sister Isabella. But there was an emptiness she couldn't quite name. A feeling that everyone else's life was moving forward while hers remained frozen in place. Jordan Matthews entered her life 2.5 years before that fateful wedding day. They met at a neighborhood coffee shop. A classic meet-cute where he was standing behind her in line, made a joke about the barista misspelling her name, and asked for her number before she could even respond. He was handsome, confident, successful, a senior analyst at a prestigious consulting firm with a kind of charisma that made people feel important just by talking to them. At first, the first 6 months were everything Natalia thought she wanted. Surprise dates, thoughtful gifts. Jordan texted her good morning every single day without fail. But then, slowly, so slowly she didn't notice at first, things began to shift. The good morning texts stopped coming. Then the surprise dates. Then the thoughtful gestures that had made her feel special. When Natalia would gently bring it up, Jordan's response was always the same. Babe, we're past the honeymoon phase. This is what real relationships look like. Not everything has to be a grand gesture. And Natalia believed him. She convinced herself this was maturity, not neglect. By their 1-year anniversary, Natalia was the one planning everything. Making reservations, buying gifts, initiating every meaningful conversation. Jordan would show up and participate, but it felt like she was dragging him through their relationship rather than walking beside him. Her best friend Serena noticed immediately. Nat, when's the last time Jordan actually planned something for you? Like, put in real effort. Natalia became defensive. He's been swamped with work. He's trying to make partner. That's been his excuse for 8 months. Not everyone shows love the same way, Serena. He's just different. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. Natalia was making excuses, shrinking herself, accepting crumbs, and calling them a feast. She was doing what so many people do when they're terrified of being alone, convincing themselves that something is better than nothing. She was 28. Most of her friends were engaged or married. Her younger sister Isabella had just gotten engaged. Even her mother would make pointed comments. So when is Jordan going to propose? The pressure came from everywhere, and Natalia felt it closing in. And then, 18 months into their relationship, Jordan proposed. They were at a chain restaurant. Nothing fancy. He didn't get down on one knee. He simply pulled out a ring box during dessert and said, "We should probably do this, right? We should probably do this. Not, I love you and want to spend my life with you. Not, you're my person and I can't imagine my future without you. Just, we should probably do this." And Natalia, desperate for the validation she'd been craving, said yes. Because she'd already invested so much time. Because everyone expected it. Because she thought maybe marriage would fix whatever felt broken between them. That was her first mistake. Believing that someone else could fill a void she hadn't even acknowledged was there. The engagement lasted 8 months. And during those 8 months, every red flag Natalia had been ignoring began waving more violently. Jordan didn't want to set a wedding date. Whenever Natalia brought it up, his answer was always vague. Let's just enjoy being engaged for a while. What's the rush? 3 months into their engagement, Natalia booked a venue on her own. Because she realized if she didn't take charge, they would never actually get married. 4 months in, She chose the caterer, the florist, the photographer, all by herself, making every decision alone. Jordan's only contribution? A distracted, whatever you want, babe, whenever she tried to involve him. Natalia's sister Isabella noticed the imbalance during a dress shopping appointment. Nat, has Jordan even seen any of the wedding plans? He's been incredibly busy at work. He hasn't been to a single vendor meeting. He hasn't looked at invitations. He hasn't even discussed the honeymoon. That's not just busy, that's checked out. Some guys just aren't into wedding planning, Bella. Natalia, some guys aren't into getting married. But Natalia didn't want to hear it. She changed the subject and continued planning a wedding that increasingly felt like a solo project. 6 months into the engagement, Jordan started coming home late. Very late. Monday, client dinner. Wednesday, team drinks. Friday, mandatory networking event. Saturday, golf with his boss. Natalia would sit in her apartment, watching Netflix alone, wondering when exactly they'd transformed from partners into distant roommates. She'd call him. Hey, just checking in. You said you'd be home by 9? Yeah, sorry babe, this thing is running long. Don't wait up. And Natalia never waited up. She never pushed back, because making Jordan feel guilty somehow felt worse than being lonely. 7 months into the engagement, she found a receipt in his jacket pocket while taking it to the dry cleaner. Dinner for two at an expensive restaurant downtown. The same week he'd told her he was too exhausted to go out for her birthday. When she asked about it, his response was immediate. That was a work dinner. Why are you going through my pockets? I wasn't going through your pockets. I was taking your jacket to get cleaned. Okay, well, it was a work thing. Can we not do this right now? Can we not do this? That phrase became Jordan's shield. Every time Natalia tried to address anything real, anything that mattered, he deflected with those 5 words. Can we not do this? Can we not fight? Can we just be chill? Meanwhile, Natalia was drowning in wedding planning, in work stress, in the growing certainty that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. But she didn't stop. She kept moving forward, kept planning, kept pretending everything was fine. Because stopping meant admitting she'd wasted 2.5 years on someone who had never truly wanted her. The morning of the wedding, Natalia woke up at 5:30 a.m. in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house. Her mother had insisted she stay there the night before. Tradition, she'd said. The bride couldn't see the groom before the ceremony. Natalia lay there in the pre-dawn darkness, staring at the ceiling, and felt absolutely nothing. Not excitement, not anticipation, not joy, just a heavy, crushing sense of dread that settled on her chest like a weight. Serena arrived at 7 in the morning with coffee, bagels, and a bottle of champagne. Morning, bride. How are we feeling? Tired. That's totally normal. Big day ahead. Did you sleep okay? Not really. Serena sat down on the bed beside her best friend. She was quiet for a moment, studying Natalia's face, before she spoke again. Nat, you know you can still back out, right? What? If you're having doubts, real doubts, not just cold feet, you can call this off. I'll handle everything. I'll tell everyone. You just have to say the word. I'm not backing out. I'm just nervous. Every bride gets nervous. Are you sure? Because nervous brides look anxious but excited. You just look sad. Serena was right. Natalia was sad. She was sad that the man she was about to marry had barely spoken to her in the past week. She was sad that he hadn't texted her that morning. She was sad that when she imagined walking down the aisle, she felt dread instead of joy. But she didn't say any of that aloud. I'm fine. Let's just get ready. By 9 o'clock, Natalia's bridesmaids had arrived. Serena, her sister Isabella, her college roommate Maya, and Jordan's sister Lauren. They popped champagne, took endless selfies, played upbeat music. Natalia smiled for every photograph, said all the right things, played the part of the blushing, excited bride. But inside, she felt like she was going through the motions of someone else's life, like she was watching herself from outside her own body. The hairstylist made conversation. This is so exciting. Have you heard from your fiancé this morning? We're doing the traditional thing. No contact before the ceremony. How romantic. Romantic. Right. The truth was simpler and sadder. Jordan hadn't called, hadn't texted, nothing. And part of Natalia was relieved, because if he had reached out, she might have heard something in his voice that confirmed what she already suspected deep down. He was having second thoughts. Perhaps he'd been having second thoughts for months. By 11 o'clock, Natalia stood in front of a full-length mirror in her wedding dress. It was stunning. ivory lace, off the shoulder sleeves, fitted through the bodice before flowing into a romantic skirt. She tried on 37 dresses before finding this one. She should have felt beautiful, radiant, ready. Instead, she felt like she was wearing armor for a battle she didn't know how to fight. Isabella got emotional. Nat, you look absolutely stunning. Jordan's going to cry when he sees you. Thanks, Bella. Are you okay? You've been really quiet all morning. Just overwhelmed, you know. Big day. Overwhelmed. That was the word Natalia kept using. Because it was easier than saying terrified or heartbroken, or I think I'm making a terrible mistake. When Natalia's mother came in to see her daughter in the wedding dress, she immediately started crying. Oh, Mija, you look like a princess. Your father is going to absolutely lose it when he sees you. She wrapped Natalia in a tight hug, and for a moment, Natalia almost broke down completely. Almost confessed everything. Almost said, Mom, I don't think Jordan wants to marry me. I don't think he ever really wanted me at all. But she didn't. Because what could her mother possibly say? Cancel the wedding with 300 guests already at the church? With $40,000 already spent? She couldn't do that to her family. So Natalia hugged her mother back and whispered, Thanks, Mom. I love you. The bridal party arrived at the church at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 1:30 sharp. The church was absolutely gorgeous. White roses, peonies, and eucalyptus adorned every surface. Candles flickered on the altar and along the aisle. Everything was exactly how Natalia had envisioned it during months of meticulous planning. 300 people filled the pews. Family, friends, colleagues, Jordan's entire extended family who had flown in from across the country. Everything was perfect, except for one critical detail. Jordan wasn't there yet. The wedding coordinator tried to stay calm. I'm sure he's just stuck in traffic. The groomsmen texted that they're only 5 minutes out. 1:15 arrived. Still no Jordan. 1:20. His best man Ryan sent a text. Running a few minutes behind. Be there soon. 1:25. The guests were growing restless. Whispers rippled through the church. People checked their watches and phones. Serena tried to maintain calm. Nat, I'm absolutely sure he's almost here. You know Jordan, always cutting it close to deadlines. Yeah, always. But what Natalia was really thinking was, what if he doesn't show up at all? What if she was standing there in this expensive dress, with her family and 300 guests waiting expectantly, and Jordan simply never came? What if he finally did what he'd been too terrified to do for months, and just ran away? At exactly 1:28, the side door of the church finally opened. Jordan walked in, and Natalia knew immediately that something was very wrong. She could see it in the way Jordan walked. Slow, reluctant, like every step toward the altar required immense effort. She could see it in how he looked. Pale, sweating despite the air conditioning, eyes wide with barely concealed panic. She could see it in how he studiously avoided making eye contact with anyone. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. Ryan, Jordan's best man, whispered urgently, Dude, you good? You look like you're about to pass out. Yeah, I'm fine. Let's just do this. At precisely 1:30, the church doors opened wide. The traditional wedding march began playing. Everyone in attendance stood and turned toward the back of the church. Natalia stood at the threshold with her father, her arm linked through his. You ready, Mija? Yes, Dad. I'm ready. But she wasn't ready. Not even close. Still, what else could she possibly say? The doors opened fully. Every eye in the church turned to watch her. And Natalia began walking down the aisle toward her future. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Keep smiling. Don't let them see your doubt. Natalia could see people crying happy tears, smiling warmly, raising phones to capture the moment. She could see Jordan standing at the altar up ahead. He looked absolutely terrified. His hands were visibly shaking. His face had gone pale. He kept glancing at the exit like he was calculating exactly how fast he could run if he needed to escape. Natalia reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek tenderly and whispered, I love you so much. Be happy, Mija. He placed her hand in Jordan's and took his seat in the front pew. Natalia stood beside the man she was about to marry. Jordan still wouldn't look at her directly. The priest began the ceremony with a warm smile. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the presence of God and these witnesses to join Jordan Matthews and Natalia Rodriguez in holy matrimony. Jordan's hands were shaking so violently now that Natalia could feel it. Marriage is a sacred bond, a covenant between two souls who have chosen to walk through life together, through joy and sorrow, through triumph and trial. Natalia could feel it building. Something was about to break. The tension was unbearable. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. Complete silence filled the church. The priest smiled, prepared to continue, when Jordan's voice cut through the air. Wait. Stop. The church went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the marble floor. Every single person stared at Jordan in shock. The priest looked completely confused. I'm sorry, what did you? Jordan's voice got louder, shaking with panic. I can't do this. Complete, devastating silence. Natalia heard the words. Her brain processed them, but she couldn't make them make sense. He can't do this. Can't do the ceremony. Can't get married. Can't marry her. The priest stammered. Jordan, perhaps we should take a moment to. Jordan cut him off, his voice getting even louder. No, I can't. I'm sorry. I thought if I just stood here and went through with it, I'd feel different. But I don't. I don't want to get married. I don't want this. Every word echoed through the silent church. Every word was heard by all 300 guests. Every word was being captured on phones that were now rising throughout the pews, cameras activating to record this disaster. Natalia's voice was barely above a whisper. Jordan, what are you saying? Jordan finally looked at her directly. I'm saying I can't marry you, Natalia. I'm sorry. I don't love you. Not the way you deserve to be loved. Not the way I should love someone I'm about to marry. Not the way I should love someone I'm about to marry. Which meant what? He'd never truly loved her? He'd been pretending for 2.5 years. Their entire relationship had been built on a lie. Jordan, please. Can we just talk about this privately? We can figure this out. There's nothing to figure out. I can't do this. I'm so sorry. Then Jordan reached for Natalia's left hand. For one brief second, she thought perhaps he was going to hold it gently. Perhaps he would apologize properly. Perhaps they could step aside and discuss this like adults. Instead, he grabbed her hand roughly and yanked the engagement ring off her finger. Not gently, not with any care whatsoever. Just ripped it off in one harsh motion. It hurt. Actually physically hurt. He set the ring down on the altar between them with a hollow sound. Looked at Natalia one final time with what appeared to be relief. And then he walked away. Jordan walked down the aisle he had walked up just minutes before. Past the front row where his parents sat with their mouths open in complete shock. Past Natalia's mother, who had started crying. Past Natalia's father, who looked like he wanted to physically stop Jordan but didn't know if he should. Past 300 guests who were now frantically pulling out their phones, whispering frantically, gasping audibly, recording every second of Natalia's complete destruction in high definition. Jordan walked straight out of the church. The heavy doors closed behind him with an echoing boom. And Natalia stood there at the altar, completely alone, in her $2,500 wedding dress, in front of every person she knew. At 28 years old, Natalia Rodriguez had never felt more worthless in her entire life. More humiliated, more exposed, more completely, utterly alone. If you've ever been publicly humiliated or betrayed by someone you loved, hit that like button. This community sees you and supports you. Natalia stood frozen at that altar for what felt like hours, but was realistically only about 20 seconds. Everyone in the church was staring at her, whispering to their neighbors. Some people were crying, presumably for her. She could see her mother's face in the front row, absolutely shattered, tears streaming down her cheeks. She could see Serena starting to stand up from the bridesmaid's side, clearly ready to rush to her friend's rescue. She could see Isabella with both hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She could see phones absolutely everywhere, recording her absolute worst moment in crisp high definition. And all Natalia could think was one thing. I need to leave. I need to run after him. I need to fix this. I need to make him stay. Because even after everything, even after Jordan had just humiliated her in the cruelest possible way in front of everyone she knew, Natalia's first instinct was still to chase him, to beg him to come back, to promise she would be better, different, more than enough. That's what happens when you spend years making yourself smaller. You forget you were ever whole to begin with. Natalia started moving, not toward the main church exit, toward the side door that Jordan had used to escape. She was actually going to chase him. She was going to beg. She took 3 steps toward that door when someone suddenly caught her wrist. The grip was firm but gentle. protective without being controlling. Natalia spun around, ready to snap at whoever was presumptuous enough to stop her. And she saw him for the first time. He was tall, easily 6'1", Korean-American, with black hair styled neatly back, strong angular features, and dark eyes that were looking at Natalia with an intensity that stopped her in her tracks. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit with a crisp white shirt and no tie. Natalia had absolutely no idea who this man was. She had never seen him before in her entire life. His voice was quiet, but incredibly firm and gentle simultaneously. "Don't." Natalia's voice was breaking, angry, defensive. "Excuse me? Let go of me right now. Don't chase him. You don't understand anything. I need to talk to him. I need to." He cut her off gently, but with absolute certainty. "No. You don't need to chase a man who just destroyed you in front of 300 people. You don't need to beg someone to choose you. What you need to do is let him go." Something about the way this stranger said those words, with such absolute certainty, such calm conviction, like he was stating an undeniable truth rather than offering an opinion, made Natalia actually stop moving. Made her actually hear what he was saying. He was right. Jordan had just humiliated her in the cruelest, most public way imaginable. And she had been about to hand him even more power by running after him like a desperate fool. Natalia whispered, "Who are you? Why do you even care?" "I'm someone who knows exactly what it's like to stand alone when someone promised they would stand beside you." "What are you talking about?" 4 years ago, I was engaged to a woman named Jennifer. We'd been together for 3 years. I genuinely thought she was my person. I thought we were building a life together. On our wedding day, she didn't show up to the church. She sent her maid of honor to tell me she couldn't go through with the marriage. I stood at that altar completely alone, in front of everyone I knew, and had to announce that the wedding was off. "I'm so sorry that happened to you." I spent the next 2 years in intensive therapy dealing with it, learning that her leaving wasn't a reflection of my worth as a person, that I couldn't have done anything differently to change her mind. When I saw your fiancé walk away, when I saw you preparing to chase after him, I saw myself 4 years ago, and I thought, maybe I could give you what absolutely no one gave me back then. What's that? Someone willing to stand with you. Someone to show you that you deserve better than this. Before Natalia could process what this stranger was saying, before she could ask any follow-up questions, he released her wrist. And then he did something Natalia would remember for the rest of her life. He turned around and started walking purposefully toward the altar. Natalia watched, completely frozen in place, as this complete stranger walked down the aisle with quiet determination. Past all the shocked faces staring at him. Past all the raised phones now turning to capture this new development. Past all the confused whispers that were rapidly turning into loud speculation. He walked with this calm, unwavering confidence. Like he knew exactly what he was doing and nothing in the world would stop him from doing it. He reached the altar where Natalia had been standing moments before. He stood in the exact spot where Jordan had been standing just 1 minute earlier. He turned to face the church full of stunned people. And he spoke clearly. His voice was calm, clear, carrying effortlessly through the entire silent church. "I'll marry her." Time completely stopped. Every single person in that church went absolutely motionless. The phones stopped their frantic recording movement. The whispers ceased entirely. Even the priest looked like he'd been flash-frozen in the middle of a breath. And Natalia? She genuinely thought she must be hallucinating. This stranger, this man she had absolutely never met before, had just announced he would marry her. In front of 300 people. In the middle of the most humiliating moment of her entire existence. Was this actually happening? Was this real? The priest stammered, completely lost. "I'm sorry, I don't. Who are you exactly?" The stranger remained respectful, but absolutely firm. "My name is Ethan Park. I'm a guest at this wedding. And I'm making a conscious choice to stand beside someone who deserves infinitely better than being left alone at this altar." The priest looked like he might actually faint from confusion and stress. "This is highly irregular. Completely unprecedented. I can't just marry 2 complete strangers. There are legal requirements. Marriage licenses that must be filed in advance. Mandatory counseling sessions. I could lose my license if I have a valid marriage license ready to file." Ethan reached smoothly into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. He handed it calmly to the priest. The priest opened it with visibly shaking hands. "Read the contents." His eyes went impossibly wide with shock. This appears to be completely legitimate. It's properly filled out. Both names are listed here. How did you possibly? When did you even? I work in corporate law. I'm trained to prepare for various contingencies. What Natalia didn't know yet, what she wouldn't learn until much later, was the truth behind that marriage license. Ethan had been at the wedding as a +1 for an old college friend. He'd been in the church parking lot when Jordan arrived a full 30 minutes late, visibly panicked and distressed. Ethan had watched Jordan pacing frantically outside, talking anxiously on his phone, clearly spiraling into some kind of crisis. Ethan had developed a very strong feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. So he'd pulled up a digital marriage license application on his phone, filled it out quickly with placeholder names, driven 3 blocks to the nearest FedEx store, printed it on proper paper stock, and returned to the church. Just in case someone desperately needed saving. He had prepared himself to rescue a complete stranger from public humiliation. But Natalia didn't know any of that context yet. All she knew in that moment was that this man had somehow made it legally possible for her to not walk out of this church as an object of universal pity. Ethan turned to look directly at Natalia. If you'll have me. Every single eye in the entire church turned to Natalia, waiting for her response, judging her decision, recording this unprecedented moment. Natalia looked at this stranger named Ethan Park. Then she looked at the side door through which Jordan had fled. Then she looked at her family in the front rows. Her mother was frantically shaking her head, eyes wide with concern, silently mouthing, "Don't do this, baby." Isabella sat frozen, clearly torn between wanting to support her sister and thinking this was absolute insanity. Serena had both her hands clasped together like she was praying for guidance. Natalia realized she had exactly 2 choices in front of her. Choice 1. Leave this church as the woman who got publicly abandoned at the altar. Become the cautionary tale that people would tell for years to come. The object of pity and gossip. Did you hear what happened to Natalia Rodriguez? Poor girl got left at the altar at 28 years old. In front of absolutely everyone. It was all over social media within an hour. So incredibly humiliating. I heard she chased him out of the church crying. Can you even imagine? Choice 2. Accept this stranger's completely insane offer. Leave this church standing confidently beside someone instead of running desperately after someone who had rejected her. Face whatever unknown consequences would come from this decision. But walk out of here with her head held high and her dignity intact. Was it completely crazy? Absolutely yes. Was it smart or sensible? Probably not. Would she potentially regret it? Quite possibly. But would she regret chasing after Jordan even more? Without question. Natalia's voice was soft, but remarkably clear and steady. Okay, yes. The church absolutely exploded with noise and movement. Gasps of shock. Shouts of disbelief. People leaping to their feet. Natalia's mother cried out. Natalia Maria Rodriguez, no? Don't you dare do this. Serena gasped. Oh my God, is this really happening? Isabella pleaded. Nat, wait. Please think about this for one more second. Random guests shouted. This cannot possibly be legal. Someone needs to stop this immediately. Jordan's mother yelled across the church. This is absolutely insane and completely inappropriate. But Ethan, this calm stranger who had somehow become Natalia's unlikely savior, simply walked over to where she stood and extended his hand to her with quiet confidence. Ethan's hand was perfectly steady. Natalia's was shaking so violently she could barely control her own movements. But she placed her trembling hand in his solid, warm one. His palm was warm and slightly calloused. His grip was firm but gentle, grounding and reassuring. And for the first time in years, perhaps ever, Natalia felt like someone was actually, truly holding her up instead of expecting her to carry all the weight alone. Ethan spoke quietly, just for her. Breathe slowly. You're completely safe. I promise you're safe with me. Natalia took a shaky breath and nodded. Ethan addressed the overwhelmed priest. Please continue with the ceremony. The priest's voice was shaking noticeably. This is... Natalia, are you absolutely certain about this decision? Do you understand this will be a legally binding marriage? This isn't symbolic or performative. If I perform this ceremony right now, you will be legally married to this man. Every eye remained fixed on Natalia, waiting. I understand completely. I'm certain. The priest turned to Ethan. And you clearly understand you're about to legally marry someone you don't actually know? Ethan remained calm and unwavering. I understand completely. The priest looked at both of them for a long, searching moment. Then at the valid marriage license in his shaking hands. Then at the absolute chaos unfolding in the church around them. The priest appeared to decide that the path of least resistance was simply to proceed with the ceremony and allow them to deal with the consequences on their own terms. The priest took a deep, steadying breath. Then, by the power vested in me, let's continue with the ceremony. The priest rushed through the traditional words. Ethan Park, do you take Natalia Rodriguez to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Ethan responded without even a microsecond of hesitation. I do. Natalia Rodriguez, do you take Ethan Park to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Natalia looked at this man standing beside her. This stranger named Ethan Park. This person who had walked directly into her disaster and offered her the most unlikely rescue imaginable. She thought about Jordan, who had known her intimately for 2.5 years and couldn't bring himself to say, I do, when it mattered most. She thought about Ethan, who had known her for literally 5 minutes and had said it without any hesitation whatsoever. I do. The priest quickly continued, desperately wanting this surreal situation to end. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Washington, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He paused, looking uncertain. I suppose you may kiss the bride. Ethan looked at Natalia. His eyes were asking for silent permission. Natalia gave the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. Ethan leaned down slowly, and he gently kissed her forehead instead of her lips. It was chaste, respectful, almost protective in its tenderness. And somehow, that simple forehead kiss felt more intimate, more caring, more genuinely affectionate than anything Jordan had done throughout their entire relationship. Ethan whispered so only Natalia could hear. You're going to be okay. I absolutely promise you're going to be okay. Ethan took Natalia's hand firmly in his, turned them both to face the church full of absolutely stunned people, and began walking purposefully down the aisle together. Natalia walked beside him, still in her elaborate wedding dress, beside a man she had just met, legally married to a complete stranger. As they walked together down that aisle, Natalia could feel every single eye burning into them, every phone frantically capturing video. Random guests shouted, "This cannot possibly be legal. Someone call, someone. I don't even know who." Natalia's father stood up, confused and protective. Natalia, Mija, please wait just a moment. Natalia's mother cried openly. Please don't do this, baby. Please. But Ethan kept walking with that same calm, steady confidence. Like he had done this 1,000 times before. Like walking a stranger out of her ruined wedding was the most natural thing in the world. And Natalia held onto his hand, like it was the only solid thing in her rapidly spinning universe. They reached the heavy wooden doors at the back of the church. The doors swung open. Bright afternoon sunlight poured in, warm and almost blinding. And they walked out into it together, side by side. Be completely honest. What would you have done in Natalia's position? Would you have accepted Ethan's offer or walked away? Comment below. We genuinely want to know your thoughts on this. Outside the church, a sleek black sedan sat waiting at the curb. A professional driver stood beside the open rear door. Ethan gently guided Natalia toward the vehicle, carefully helped her gather the massive, cumbersome skirt of her wedding dress, and she climbed inside somewhat awkwardly. Ethan climbed in smoothly after her. The door closed with a solid, final sound. The driver pulled away from the curb immediately, and suddenly, they were completely alone together in the back seat. For approximately 3 full minutes, neither of them spoke a single word. Natalia sat rigidly, staring out the tinted window, watching the church grow smaller and smaller in the distance. Watching confused guests pour out onto the front steps, pointing frantically at their departing car, phone still raised and recording. Her phone was tucked in her small bridal purse. She could feel it vibrating constantly. Texts, phone calls, probably hundreds of social media notifications by now. She didn't even consider looking at it. She couldn't handle that reality yet. Ethan broke the silence. Are you okay? Was Natalia okay? She had just been publicly abandoned at the altar by her fiancé of 8 months. She had just legally married a complete stranger in front of 300 witnesses. Her entire carefully planned life had just imploded spectacularly in the span of maybe 20 minutes. I honestly don't know. That's a completely fair answer. Silence continued. Where are we going exactly? Somewhere quiet and private. Somewhere you can actually breathe for a few minutes without everyone staring at you. And where specifically is that? My apartment. It's about 10 minutes from here. You can stay as long as you need to. No expectations of any kind. No pressure whatsoever. Just safe space. Your apartment. The place where you live. Yes, that's typically what apartment means. With you. A person I've never met before today. Well, technically speaking, I'm your legal husband now, so we're not complete strangers anymore. Did you actually just make a joke about this situation? I was attempting to lighten the incredibly heavy mood. Is it working at all? No, not even a little bit. Noted. I'll stop trying. Brief silence fell between them. Natalia's voice cracked slightly with emotion. Why did you do that back there? Do what specifically? All of it. Stop me from chasing Jordan. Walk up to the altar. Actually marry me. Why would you possibly do any of that for someone you don't even know? Ethan took a long pause before answering. This answer carried significant emotional weight. 4 years ago, I was engaged to marry a woman named Jennifer. We had been together for 3 years. I genuinely believed she was the person I would spend my entire life with. I thought we were building something real and lasting together. What happened to her? To you too. On what was supposed to be our wedding day, Jennifer didn't show up to the church at all. She sent her maid of honor to deliver a message that she couldn't go through with the marriage. I stood at that altar completely alone, in front of every person I knew, and had to announce to them all that the wedding was canceled. And you know what the absolute worst part of that entire horrific experience was? It wasn't that Jennifer left. People leave, relationships end. That happens. The worst part was that not a single person came up to stand beside me at that altar. Everyone just stared at me with pity, whispered to each other, started taking pictures. No one tried to stop my spiral into shame and humiliation. I'm genuinely sorry that happened to you. That sounds absolutely terrible. I spent the next 2 years working with an excellent therapist, learning that Jennifer leaving wasn't any kind of reflection on my worth as a person, that there was literally nothing I could have said or done differently to change her mind or make her stay. When I saw Jordan walk away from you today, when I saw you preparing to chase after him, I saw my younger self 4 years ago, standing there broken and desperate, and I thought, maybe I could give you what absolutely no one gave me back then. What's that? Someone willing to stand with you. Someone to show you in a concrete way that you deserve infinitely better than someone who walks away. Natalia looked at Ethan then, really, truly looked at him for the first time since this surreal sequence of events had begun. This complete stranger who had just legally bound himself to her simply because he didn't want her to feel the same crushing loneliness he had experienced. This person who had sacrificed his own comfort and normalcy to give her back some measure of dignity. Thank you. Genuinely, truly, thank you. You don't need to thank me for basic human decency. Yes, I absolutely do. What you did back there, that was extraordinary. Completely insane, yes, but extraordinary. We can get the marriage annulled very quickly and very quietly. I have a lawyer who can handle all the paperwork efficiently. No one has to know this was anything more than a temporary solution to an impossible situation. What if I don't want it annulled immediately? Ethan sounded genuinely surprised. What do you mean? What if I need some time away from everything and everyone? What if I need real space to figure out what I actually want? What if a stranger husband who wants absolutely nothing from me is exactly what I need right now? Then you stay for as long as you need. No questions. No judgment. No expectations. Ethan's apartment was located in a modern high-rise building in downtown Seattle. The space was impressive. Clean lines, minimalist aesthetic, clearly expensive but not ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline. Polished hardwood floors gleamed. The furniture was high quality but understated and functional. The entire space felt like Ethan himself. Calm, put together, intentionally designed. The guest room is through that door on the left. It has an attached private bathroom. There are clothes in the dresser that should fit you reasonably well. I had a friend stay here a few months back who left some things behind. Thank you for this. For all of this. Take whatever time you need in there. When you're ready to emerge, we can start figuring out the practical next steps. But there's absolutely no rush at all. Natalia walked slowly into the guest room. closed the door gently behind her, and finally, allowed herself to actually feel everything she'd been desperately holding back. She collapsed onto the bed, still wearing her elaborate wedding dress, and she cried. She cried for the relationship that had clearly been built on lies and false hope. She cried for all the time she had wasted trying to make Jordan love her. She cried for the public humiliation. She cried for the young woman she'd been when she first met Jordan, hopeful and trusting and naive. She cried until she was completely empty. And then, when the tears finally stopped flowing, Natalia stood up. She carefully removed the wedding dress that had cost her months of savings. She left it lying in a crumpled heap on the floor, a symbol of everything she was choosing to leave behind. She took a long, hot shower in the stranger's bathroom, washing away the makeup and the expectations and the crushing weight of other people's judgment. She put on the borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt that Ethan had mentioned. She looked at herself in the mirror, and for the first time in years, Natalia didn't see someone who needed to be fixed or improved or made more palatable. She saw someone who had survived, someone who had chosen herself. When Natalia finally emerged from the guest room, she found Ethan in the kitchen, quietly making tea. "Is chamomile all right with you?" "Chamomile is perfect. Thank you." They sat together at his kitchen counter in comfortable silence, drinking tea. Natalia's phone was still buzzing frantically in her purse. She still hadn't looked at it even once. "Eventually, you're going to need to talk to your family. They're undoubtedly worried and confused." "I know. I will. Just not yet. And eventually, Jordan will probably try to reach out with some kind of explanation or apology. I don't want to hear anything he has to say." "Good. You absolutely shouldn't. What happens now? Like, practically speaking, what do we do? Now, tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, we start handling the logistics and practicalities. One day at a time. One decision at a time. It's really that simple?" It really is that simple. And somehow, sitting in a stranger's modern apartment, drinking chamomile tea with the man she had accidentally married, Natalia felt more grounded and more genuinely herself than she had felt in years. Was this situation absolutely crazy? Without question. Was this the permanent solution to all her problems? Definitely not. Would there be difficult complications ahead? Almost certainly. But it was a beginning. A strange, unexpected, completely unprecedented beginning. But a beginning nonetheless. A chance to rebuild. A chance to rediscover who Natalia Rodriguez actually was when she wasn't shrinking herself to fit into someone else's narrow vision. Thank you so much for listening to Natalia and Ethan's story. We want to know what you think about this situation. Was Ethan right to step in the way he did? Was Natalia wise to accept his offer, or should she have walked away? What would you have done if you were in her position? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely read every single one. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about love, heartbreak, and finding yourself when everything falls apart. Share this video with someone who needs to know that sometimes the absolute worst day of your life can actually be the beginning of something unexpectedly better. Thank you for being here with us.